Finally, it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, back with another Lincoln Addict podcast. I believe I'm now on episode 42, if I'm counting correctly. I appreciate so many of you that have come back or even have been with me since the beginning, so thank you very much. The 2024 episodes are available here on YouTube. Prior episodes, which there's some good ones, you can download Podbean, or you can even go to LincolnAddict.com and select how to listen, and you can link over and even listen on the main Podbean website if you don't want to download an app, and you can check out those episodes there. But I got to thank my title sponsors, Devious Customs and Colorado Customs, for the continued support. You basically have Devious Customs that offers various parts, including air suspension and other parts as well that are going to be maybe more in line for someone that doesn't want to customize their Lincoln. And then Colorado Custom Wheels, they make the Lincoln replica wheels. They make steering wheels for these Lincolns. Of course, kind of a high-end brand, but you definitely get what you pay for. Check out deviouscustoms.com as well as Colorado Custom with no S. So this episode has been in the works for a while, and I put together a lot of good content, and I kind of sat on it a little while. And because we have our cruise tomorrow, and I had a little bit of time today on lunch, I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm going to make this one happen. On this episode, the primary topic is the 1963 Lincoln Continental Exterior Aesthetics. So, falling in line for the topics, the same topic that I did for the 1961 Lincoln and the 1962. 1961, of course, was a big deal because it was a new model. 62 was the minor refinements, and I think you're going to see with 63, they kind of followed in that same footstep with, minor improvements, minor changes, things like that. Of course, 64, which will be the next episode rather, there's greater changes that you guys will see. Now, what I would ask is if you have feedback, certainly chime in on this episode. I certainly will miss things more than likely, and I definitely appreciate the community involvement. So many of you will chime in and give me feedback, or wow, I didn't know that, or what about this? And that's certainly appreciated here in the comments on YouTube. Now, some of you are going to listen to the audio version via Spotify, Pandora, Podbean, right? That's fine too. If you're in the car and you're just happen to be listening, I'm going to describe as much as I can. But if you get an opportunity to go back and also let this play through on YouTube, it greatly helps the channel. The channel has definitely grown, and I've tried to position myself in a way that I cover content that really nobody else is doing. That's always what my kind of goal is, right? Certainly there's videos on Lincolns. There's, folks that do air suspension and things like that. But I'm trying to, carve my own lane. And that's what I've continued to do. The majority of my videos, which kind of keep me going, are the listing reviews. So there's plenty of those here. Many of you have chimed in to say, hey, wow, you've helped me out. You've taught me a few things I need to think about. So keep all that in mind. The episode overview is brought to you by, again, our friends at Devious Customs. And I would, again, remind you that deviouscustoms.com doesn't just have customizing parts. Let's say you have some window switches that you want to change out and you're willing to kind of go with a little bit different look, not 100% factory. Jeff and team at Devious Customs has you covered. Just go out to his website, let him know Lincoln Addicts sent you. You can also call Jeff, and if he doesn't answer, he will always get right back to you. That's deviouscustoms.com. Okay, the Lincoln Life updates. So I got a couple big ones. Number one, I'm recording this on November 15th, and JFK visited the Tampa Bay area, and specifically Hillsborough County. He was in Florida, but basically on 11/18 of 1963. And, being that this is my born day month, I was born on 11/23 in the late 70s. JFK, unfortunately, was killed on 11/22. So my birthday always kind of coincided that one calendar day difference. And it was always intriguing growing up, seeing and hearing and reading and seeing the specials. And there was so much, controversy over that, very dark day in Dallas. But because JFK had made his trip here, and I always knew that on 11/18 of 1963, before he went back to D.C., and before he then made his trip to Texas, I always wanted to do something as a nod, and that's what we do now. Every November, we do our Tampa Kennedy cruise, and again, it's celebrating JFK's safe visit to this area, specifically down Lafayette, which has since many years ago been renamed Kennedy Boulevard. There's a statue down there. There's a marker that the city of Tampa unveiled a few years ago on the 50th anniversary. My dad and I went to that unveiling, and that was more of like kind of a marker. It's not right where the statue is. It's a little bit down, more kind of in the central downtown area, which is kind of a stone's throw from where we'll be, but basically on that same route because they went down Franklin Street and things like that. So I say all that because, again, we're celebrating our 7th annual Tampa Kennedy Cruise. If you follow me on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, I did a live video on Friday the 15th. And that video kind of covered some of the key information. So more than likely, I'm not going to necessarily pick up anybody that's going to hear this, today and go, hey, I'm going to come tomorrow. But in the event that does happen, you can certainly go on Facebook and type in 7th annual Tampa Kennedy Cruise, or just search Tampa Kennedy Cruise and you'll find the event page. It basically is anywhere from a half day to a couple of hours, all the way to like a full day of festivities. Luckily, this year I moved it up a week. One, because my born day is the following Saturday. But basically what I wanted to do is move it the week, not have it the week or the weekend rather before Thanksgiving, just because, some folks are out, they're starting to kind of get in the holiday mode. They've got things going on, so on and so forth. So what we did is we moved it up a week, and that put it at the 16th of November this year. And we're going to, because that's the third Saturday of the month, that coincides with an event held in Tampa, which is the third Saturday every month, Rides by the River. We're going to go to that as an early meetup for anybody that wants to kind of go down there, a couple of hours, and then cruise over to the cruise meetup spot, which is 10 minutes, 15 minutes away, give or take, with traffic. But we will meet officially at 10 a.m. at West Shore Plaza. We've met up there in the past. Some folks go in and grab a coffee. Some just kind of hang out and mingle for about an hour and a half. And then we leave on the cruise, which the primary cruise is down Kennedy Boulevard. We go circle around the University of Tampa where the Kennedy statue is. We kind of take some photos, and then we cruise down Bayshore because Bayshore is one of the most beautiful roads around here, and it's kind of a stone's throw from there at UT. We cruise down Bayshore back to Tampa. We do a group photo, and we kind of have a couple things lined up this year. Our friend Lou, with his Lincoln, he's got some space over at a place called the Paddock, and we're going to go over there and possibly take a group photo. So those are a few things that we have going on. Some of you may not be in the state of Florida, and you're saying, hey, I want to be able to come down to this. Certainly you can make plans in the future. I'll post probably in the next few weeks the date for 2025, which will be our 8th annual in about a year from now. But if you ever have questions, you can reach out to me, LincolnAddictPodcast.com, on that cruise. Next, I want to give a huge shout out to Teresa T.C. Connor. Now, if you did not hear, Ride of Your Life Season 2 recently premiered. This is hosted by, it's Courtney Hansen's show on Motor Trend. And I had a unique opportunity to submit a story. And the story was good enough for them to go to the next stage, and that was contacting TC's daughter to kind of see if potentially it could all work out, right? And TC's daughter gave more information. but I kind of crafted a backstory on why this individual should be given a car. And if you haven't seen the show Ride of Your Life, it's pretty cool. They build a vehicle and they give it to a recipient that, you know, is typically a person that would kind of give you the shirt off their back, right? They've also had some other examples this year, you know, first responders and things like that, which are super cool. But they've had different storylines, and I was able to craft a storyline and provide it back to the producer of the show, speak with him on the phone, and he liked where, you know, it was going. He liked the backstory, and of course he spoke to TC's daughter, and the rest is history. So it was pretty cool. I did not go to any of the filming. I was privy to some of the details, and I was kind of sworn to secrecy. TC, for those that don't know, that's her nickname. She has worked at Lincoln Land since '86, so give or take almost 40 years. And she was the recipient of a '65 Lincoln Continental Convertible with a crate engine, and some other modifications, and it's a pretty cool car. I got to thank Brian Fuller from Fuller Moto. He's also on Carfix, but he's the lead designer for Courtney Hansen's show in season 2, which again is on Motor Trend. I got to thank Brian Fuller, and I also got to thank Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land. I often talk about if you need parts, call Lincoln Land first, right? They've been in business since '78, which is amazing, and they usually have it. If they don't, they know where to get it. They're the folks that know, you know, how to rebuild the stuff, how to get the stuff done. But Chris at Lincoln Land, he knew some, I understand, of the story. I was sworn to secrecy, but Chris was involved, and he actually supplied some parts for the vehicle, ironically enough, for the car that was going to someone that works at his company, which is super cool. And, you know, you talk about kind of giving back, right? How awesome is that? So check it out. Now, listen, I will tell you, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I posted this in the lincolnforum.net, and I haven't went back to look at any of the comments, but, you know, certainly there's going to be some things that all these TV shows, right? It's going to make you kind of go, I don't like that aspect. I don't like what Brian Fuller did here. You know, why did he do that? It is what it is. And all I can tell you is when Courtney Hansen bought those 3 cars, you know, one was a parts car, one was going to be, I think, a flipper, and one was going to be on the show, the 65. And I'm just happy that it's another car is getting money put into it. And this one, a pretty solid amount with a crate engine, and it's going to be on the road. So how cool is that? It's also going to someone like Teresa Connor, who, again, has helped so many people. And she's just a hardworking, blue-collar type of girl, and I'm happy to call her a friend. But it was super cool to be able to kind of plant the seed, and her daughter ran with it, and it all worked out. So check it out on Motor Trend. Big shout out to TC and Lincoln Land. Also, huge shout out to Tony Boss Bolin. You hear him at the beginning with a quick intro. Boss Bolin actually delivered parts to the ROYL garage, which is the Ride of Your Life garage. I think Eddie was involved too up in Georgia, kind of, you know, handing some parts off and delivering some things. And it was really a group effort. So, you know, for anybody that just thinks every show has an unlimited budget and they can just buy whatever they need and this and that, they highly rely upon donations from companies and things like that. And someone like Chris at Lincoln Land really stepped up. Again, Tony donated fuel and time, and a lot of people did, and some people didn't even know the whole story. So I didn't tell anyone, and kudos to TC. Lincoln Life Updates is brought to you by our kinfolk at Colorado Custom Wheels. Again, if you want to replace the hubcap, aka wheel covers on your car, look no further than Colorado Custom with no S.com. They make a Lincoln replica wheel that can make 17-inch wheels and up. And they look great, and the hubcaps won't go flying off. So I know it's more of a custom look, but I tell you what, I get compliments wherever I drive my Lincoln with my Colorado custom wheels. Okay, next, I typically cover Lincolns for sale. I will just tell you this. I have been covering as many that come up as possible. if you go on bringatrailer.com, and if you're any fan of this channel, you know that I'm pretty much an eagle eye for any Lincoln that posts here. And it's good because I just like talking about these cars, right? So it's a match made in heaven. I won't go into a lot of detail, but basically on 11/6, which was just a couple weeks ago, a 67 Lincoln Continental Convertible sold for $75,500, and that was the silver mist metallic color, a very cool color. So if you're interested, I have the listing reviews. The listing reviews kind of go over the car in general, maybe some of the things that have been changed, what possibly the car will sell for. And then I try to do a follow-up with most of the cars that sell to just briefly discuss, what it sold for, maybe why it went for that much, maybe why it didn't quite hit the mark. Certainly we've seen the prices increase with the 66 and 67 convertibles and sedans. This one sold again $75,500. I just did another review. This one's going to end in 3 days from the time of this recording, and it's a 67 convertible that is the ivory gold, I think it is, color. Let's see here. It's the Florentine gold metallic. And this car's currently at $22,000. I do think this one's going to go well above that. And I did a listing and review on it. If you're interested, I will tell you. The guys at Hammer and Wrench that did the videos and the work on the car, they set the precedence for how you do a video, the content, the amount of just information that they provided. They went over so many steps of that car, and that video on Bring a Trailer really proves that if you put the extra effort in, it goes a long way, and hopefully that will morph into dollars, which of course is the name of the game, and that car will sell for a good amount. So kudos to them. Check it out. Lincoln's for Sale is brought to you by our family at Griot's Garage. I often tell my buddies when they say, hey, what's the best detailing products on the market today? I say it's Griot's, GRIOT''S. You can go to griotsgarage.com and order stuff. They've had some good deals. I'm sure they're going to have Black Friday deals coming soon as well. And some of their stuff is really cool because I like having the little spray bottles and then you refill them as you need. They're great products, and don't just take my word for it. We had Nick Griot on, who now is running the company. In the past, he's a Lincoln guy, and he talked about why their products are superior over the competition, rather. griotsgarage.com. Okay, next we got Lincolns and TVs, movies, music videos, album covers. I'm not going to give you the full scope of this one, but I will tell you recently I watched on Netflix the 3-part series. This is the Zodiac speaking. Now, I watch a lot of true crime. I listen to true crime podcasts. I read about true crime. And I never had really went down the bunny trail of the Zodiac, okay? Which I'm not going to do here. It's a crazy story, that 3-part Netflix series, amazing. That got me to go back and watch the 2007 film Zodiac, and I was listening to True Crime Garage. Love that podcast, and they had a gentleman on there that was talking a little bit about some of the facts and all the research that he has done over the years, and he mentioned the Zodiac film. He says, hey, the first 45 minutes, really good, really well done, really accurate, based upon the details of what happened back in the 60s. It does become a little bit slow from there, and the story is about someone that kind of becomes obsessed with the case. But I say all that because there is a Lincoln in that film. I love watching films that are era specific because you get to see the cars from that era, the houses, the different filming locations are cool. But if you watch the film like I did, you're going to see a Lincoln Continental sedan in it, and see if you can pick that up, and I'll mention a little bit more on the next episode. But definitely a good film. I enjoyed it. I wish there was a little bit more to the ending, but of course, if you've ever followed the case or listened or read about it, there's speculation on who the Zodiac could be, and I will leave it at watch the 3-part Netflix deal if you've got access to Netflix. It's really, really good. I know there's going to be people that continue to debate who the person was, but if you listen to the recent true crime podcast episodes, the expert that they have on there, he has a very interesting take that it just wasn't one person. And I tend to agree with his assessment of that. So anyways, I know that's a little off topic from Lincoln's, but it ties in because in the Zodiac film, there is a Lincoln Continental sedan. Check it out. Okay, so we're 20 minutes in. Let's get going with the main topic. I'm going to share my screen here and bounce over to my presentation here. Now, again, I would ask if you chime in, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that sounds good, and you have a comment or you have a thought, comment it below. 1963 Lincoln Continental Exterior Design Aesthetics and more. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Lincoln Land Inc., aka Lincoln Land here in Clearwater. If you need parts, hit them up. Okay, so the overview. Once again, minor styling changes accompanied more robust mechanical and quality improvements of the 63 Lincoln Continental. Additional galvanized steel was used in the body, and a zinc-rich primer was incorporated into the painting process, both with the intent of fighting off rust and corrosion better. A new rear deck lid was fitted, and it featured a higher top surface to increase usable storage space inside, equivalent to an additional 2 suitcases, basically. This brought the deck lid up closer to the top of the rear fenders and gave the car somewhat of a squarer appearance from the rear, which we will see. Under the deck lid, the luggage compartment was also reworked for maximum storage space. A chrome Continental star was added to the upper rear face of the deck lid, and the insert below that decorated the deck lid was once again updated, resembling the new front grille texture, but not really duplicating it as in previous years. So one thing you can definitely tell in the 61, 2s, and 3s, the front end and the grille, and I kind of talked about that in the last episode, how they pretty much kind of mirror, to a certain extent, the design aesthetics, as you would imagine. The radio antenna was relocated. This was a big change. We'll see from the left rear fender to the right front, which makes the 63 cars easy to identify from the others, since the 64 and 65 Continentals were larger. Of course, you can easily tell a 63 from a 64, but the 63, the real tell is in 1 and 2, the antenna is on the back. A new grille design honored the 56 through 57 Continental Mark II by using that design as inspiration for the 63 design. A series of small squares served as the main pattern, interrupted by a thin horizontal chrome bar that ran between the headlights as in 62. A series of vertical bars sliced the design into 6 sections, 6 above and 6 below the horizontal bar, with the grille areas surrounding the headlights being wider and slightly taller than the center section. Lower in the front bumper, the parking and turn signals received new amber-colored lenses reflecting an industry change to amber signal lights for safety reasons. Ironically enough, in 64, they go back to clear. I just talked to Chris Dunn at Lincoln Land about this recently, but as Chris pointed out, in 64, they do have amber bulbs. So I don't know if they were sitting on a bunch of clear lenses and they said, hey, why do we reinvent the wheel in 63? But just know in 64, those are amber lenses on the front for the turn signals. You will sometimes see, and I've seen this recently, in 63, you'll see the clears and someone swapped them out at some point. New paint codes made sure the new Lincolns were up to date color-wise, something I kind of forgot to cover with 61, 62s. Maybe I'll do a video in the future on that topic. So this was kind of a cool press release, the history of the classic Lincoln Continental look. So 39, 40, 56, 63. And it goes on to say the clean, low classic lines of the original Lincoln Continental upper left have been carried through to the current model lower right. Conceived in 1939 by the late Edsel Ford as his custom-built personal car, the Continental became a limited production model in 1940, which is the upper right. When the much copied hooded steel top version was introduced from 39 to 48, some 5,000 units were built. After a lapse of 7 years, the Continental was revived in the $10,000 modern classic Mark II, lower left. Only 3,000 Mark II Continentals were built in 55 and 50, from 55 to 57. Current Lincoln Continentals retaining distinctive styling continuity from early Continentals and the Mark II have been awarded recognition throughout the world for design excellence. Okay, the 63 Lincoln Continental Convertible. So what I did, or overview rather, what I did was I went back to some of my sources, and I have a huge collection of the Continental comments. This is the best way to explain it is the LCOC publication. And for years, I think there's been 4 issues per year, and sometimes a 5th, which is the meet issue, where they would have their annual meet at, and that would encompass more streamlined content from that specific meet, but give or take about 4 to 5 issues per year. Now, the May-June issue of 2000 has this story in here, which is titled The 1963 Lincoln Continental Story by Tim Howley. Tim certainly knows his stuff. I've seen his name pop up in many articles. And one excerpt that I wanted to mention here was, while the 63 Lincoln Continental looks more like a 62 than a 62 looks like the 61, the 63 is the most change of all 3 of these closely related years. The 63 Lincoln Continental, while returning to the tiny squares grill blocks of the 61, incorporates a new vertical grill theme, which was intensified, of course, as we know now, in 64. The 63 vertical grill theme is repeated in the rear deck molding. The 63 rear deck is slightly raised because of the 63 luggage area. It's considered larger than the 61 and 62. The radio antenna is moved from the left rear fender to the right front fender. The hubcap styling remains the same in 62. Okay, so the production. This is stuff I like. I like the numbers aspect of it. So if you look at my little chart at the top, in 63, you basically have 28,095 sedans, and you have 3,138 convertibles. Amazingly enough, the difference between the sedan and the convertible was only about $700, give or take. Well, $650. There were 24,000, almost, let's call it 25,000 more sedans produced than convertibles. And you could imagine families probably going, okay, a convertible, we're going to use this car to go on family trips and things like that. And just the convertible numbers, it still astonishes me that, 2,700 to 3,500, give or take, is the production for each of these model years. Now, in 61, you had 25,164. That was the 4th generation new model. That's total production. In 62, you have 31,061. And then you have in 63, 31,233. Now, so here's a key note: the small incremental sales increase each year. So from 61 to 62, you had a pretty big jump, about 23% increase in sales, right? But from 62 to 63, you had a 0.5% each, right? So it was that to me, and I had this noted here on the slide, that to me could have led to bigger changes, although the changes were probably already set in motion, because think about it, they don't have just a couple of months to go, okay, let's change the model year. That stuff is in the planning. It's very much probably like what Apple does with the iPhone, right? The people that are not fans of iPhone often say, wow, in 15 years, the iPhone has hardly changed. The design element of it maybe hasn't, but it's incremental updates that are made. And, Apple's planning way in advance for, the iPhone 17, the iPhone 18. They kind of know what they can squeeze out in terms of sales, and they're the ones that know the numbers, just like Lincoln would have known the numbers here. So they kind of know what they need to do to get where they need to be to kind of meet the numbers that they say that they will. The 63 Lincoln Continental here, I don't have the dates for when production started or ended. Unfortunately, if anyone has this information, please let me know. But 246 more sedans in 63 versus 62 were produced. 74, believe it or not, less convertibles in 63 versus 62. Sales were basically flat in 63 over 62, only selling 172 total more vehicles that year in 63. Was it the fact that they looked so much similar? What we've seen in some of the messaging was the fact that they wanted folks to know that when you bought into this brand and this vehicle, that you weren't going to have like a totally new model next year where you're like, oh man, I should have waited and just bought that one, right? And you have someone frustrated that spent $5,500, $6,000, $6,500. So I'm wondering if the sales numbers were just the fact, was it that? Some folks have also pointed out, and I don't necessarily believe that this impacted 63, so to speak, but some of the folks that grew up in this era have chimed in on my social media, and they said, after the JFK assassination on 11/22/63, it put a sour taste into people's mouths about said vehicle, just because they remembered that, right? Again, I don't necessarily believe that may be directly impacted, because again, at this point, that year was already, they were already making the 64s, but different food for thought. The 63 Lincoln Continental, so a vintage ad here. For 63, we have enlarged your private world and provided you the added, or with added power. This was a cool ad. Some of these ads you'll see as a one-pager. This was, of course, the two-pager, and definitely like this one. At the end, I think I'm going to show briefly, I'll show you a couple of the ads I have up here. I've done a few in social media, and I'll also show you the back wall behind me, which is some of my Hot Wheels. And I'll include that probably with this episode. The 63 Lincoln Continental press photos. So these are various sources, but typically Lincoln Motor Company, they actually have some good content on their press area, their media area, if you will. This is a beautiful photo of the 63. One of the standout things that people love about it is I think the refinements. I mean, to me, I like the grill the most in 63 as opposed to 1 and 2. I also, like many other people, although this isn't a deal breaker for me, so many people love the curved glass in 61, 2, and 3. Of course, the 63 does retain that. This photo, they have the windows down and just looking like a brand new car with a beautiful look. You can see the amber turn signals in the front. Again, left and right would have been amber. And that does go back to clear in 64 with an amber bulb. Here's another great press photo. We see the driver's side. If I could remember correctly, and I'll have to cover this in the future, Chris and I were just talking about it. Believe it or not, some of these years the antenna doesn't go all the way down. I think in 64 or 65 it does. But you see here the antenna is down pretty far. If I recall correctly, that's as far as it goes down in 63. It doesn't go flush, as some people might expect. Okay, here's another photo, pretty much the same angle, but the people are leaning against the rear quarter panel, looking up there. Okay, so 63 Lincoln Continental. Here's a few more things in terms of the brochure. There's a few brochures out there. Some of these are hard to find. The one, the image here, a new concept of luxury car motoring. This one's harder to find. I don't physically have it in my collection, unfortunately. But there's a lot in my digital collection, if that makes sense. So you can see here on the left, more space inside, more power under the hood. That was kind of the reoccurring theme. We saw a little bit of that earlier with the deck lid refinements, but also, by the way, you end up with a 4-barrel carburetor, although I'm not going to talk about the engine and interior so much on this one. The more power comes from some of those changes, like the 4-barrel carburetor. And I think there was a few slight changes to the actual intake manifold, but they knew what they were doing in terms of those minor refinements. Classic styling, simplicity is the keynote. Complete absence of and then line or ostentation. I always struggle with that one. Lines are crisp and clean. America's most distinctive automobile, a heritage of class motor cars. You can kind of see the lineage there. Kind of coming up to the 63. No change just for the sake of change or novelty. Always in style while you are driving it. Worth more when you sell it. Only subtle refinements in each new model year. That was a key theme that we continued to see because, again, they didn't want you to buy and then have buyer's remorse a few months later going, wow, I should have just waited. Man, look at this one. It's one of those weird things. Like, you don't want that, but at the same time, 64 changes and it's someone may have liked that more. It's just one of those things. You will also immediately recognize the 64 Lincoln Continental. Ironically, I think this came out probably later towards the end of the production because it talks about the 64 because you obviously add the 64 in here, you can certainly tell. Modern size. So I'm not going to read all of the smaller bullet points on the left, but design especially for today's motoring needs. I always like these photos that they took, especially this one, kind of the overhead one, where the cars are white and then you got the black Lincoln, so it's kind of sticking out there. This is, of course, in black and white for those that are listening to the audio-only version. But always really love looking at these photos again because it's so hard to find photos from 1960s, especially dealerships and things like that. So often, this is the best that we can get. A feel and look of luxury, so America's most luxurious automobile, and it's kind of reinforcing here some of the key items and the insulation that was added. Welded body reduces the chance of squeaks and rattles, so they did an additional welding and things like that with the unibody to make it even more quiet and luxurious. Riding with luxury, they talk a little bit about some of the key things here. Rear suspension completely rubber cushionized. Greater vehicle weight adds to riding comfort. Riding and driving luxury. America's best performing, easiest handling automobile, and it's amazing to me that you can drive these cars with such ease. Some love the crank-mounted power steering pump. Some hate it, but like when you drive this big boat of a car, so to speak, you just drive it with ease. It's just so easy to drive, and that's a great thing about it, and that's what they're reinforcing here. Riding and driving luxury, primarily focusing on the exterior aesthetics, so I will kind of go through this one a little bit quicker, but I love this image. This image on the right also appears in the color catalog for that particular year, and it's kind of cool because the illustration, although it looks like a photo, there's no pillar there, so you get a chance to really kind of take in the full interior. And this was one I recently posted on the right, America's most exclusive automobile. No lower price editions. Basically, you have the four-door sedan and the four-door convertible. It's one series only, and love this image. If anybody has this catalog and they would like to donate it or maybe get rid of it, let me know. Lincoln Addict Podcast at gmail.com. Unmatched quality and reliability. Again, you've got a few more key things here. 189 separate checkouts on the final 12-mile road test. These cars were road tested. The engines were ran for 3 hours. Oil pan was removed and cylinder walls and bearings examined. I mean, the amount of effort that they put into these vehicles back then is unprecedented. It wouldn't happen today. They were going above, to say that they were going above and beyond was an understatement. There's significant refinements for 63 with the engine and spaciousness, basically approximately 2 inches more knee room in the front compartment on the passenger side. That's something that's not often talked about, but I'll hit upon that hopefully in a future video talking about the interiors. America's most advanced and refined design on the right. Significant refinements for 63. Again, the R-word refinements, they're going to continue. They talk about larger universal joints with higher torque capacity. It's kind of crazy. These vehicles, for those that don't know, the U-joints on them are like there's double U-joints. And it's kind of a lot of stuff on these cars are overkill, but it's just what they did. And then this was the back here with the famous Lincoln Star. This is the dealership brochure front and back. And I'll kind of go through this one a little bit quicker. I'm not going to read everything, but this is a beautiful brochure. I have pretty much all of the 60s for the most part, and definitely a brochure that's great if you have one of these cars and you kind of display it with it. We can see just a beautiful sedan. Here's the photo I mentioned earlier showing the interior, and this is just such a great photo. My friend Chris Dunn, he has, I think, that color dash in his garage, like a wall hanger. Just looks beautiful, and so much classiness definitely goes into these interiors. And then there's just the awesome dash of 63, really similar to the previous years. I mean, there are some key tells, but I'll kind of talk about that in the future with the interior videos that I plan to do. Convertible, just looking beautiful here, and not much to really say. At first glance, it looks like the little keyhole cover there, but I do not think that it is. Of course, that was gone by the early 62 models. But just some great photos. Now, I say photos, most of these are illustrations. They look like photos, but certainly I think you understand what I'm saying. This is cool because it shows the top up. Of course, no B pillar. So without the B pillar there, it has that kind of flow through, which many of us love. That, there's people that modify the sedans now to do that. Just to be clear, even on the sedan, this is not structural 100%. Shout out to Pat Tian. Pat's done a video on his YouTube channel talking about that is not structural at all on the sedans. Okay, here's a great photo as well for the same catalog. Just an awesome car. I'm kind of transported back when I look at these. You see it's a dark night. You've got the lights out, all on, if you will, around the city. You've got the interior lights on here, and just time machine is what I think of. It just transports me back. Here was talking about the warranty, the 2-year warranty, and then some of the other key call outs here on the right, just reinforcing the quality. A few other things. The only thing I want to point out here is, again, the trunk space. They really wanted to reinforce that. I think that was based upon customer feedback, and they, of course, raised that deck lid a little bit, which we'll see in some of the photos. And then you've got the interior options, which I'll talk about in the future. Fully equipped for your motoring pleasure. These power features are standard equipment. They have improved sedan interior lighting for safety, and then other 63 Lincoln Continental standard equipment is listed there. Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes here in terms of the photos. So here is the last detail. That's the source of these photos, TLD, and just a beautiful 63 here we can see. Now, the ironic thing about this car is it is a 63, okay? But I know what you might be thinking. Hey, you just told us the antenna is on the front in 63. Now, there are some people that will modify a car, and that can throw you off a little bit, and certainly this is one of them. They either at some point shaved the basically a body modification, and shaved and filled in the antenna on the front and moved it to the back. We've seen guys that I like the antenna in the back. It kind of has that cool look to me, but certainly the antenna is not here. The one thing that we will see is the distinctive 63 grille. We also see those amber turn signals that I talked about earlier. We can see the rear grille as well, as I'll call it, with 63. We'll get better photos here in a moment. And then you've got the raised deck lid with the star on it now, because there is room for that. Now, this is a 62 Lincoln Continental convertible. The reason why I put this here is you'll note that it has the white, not the amber turn signals. 63 Lincoln Continental. These were just a few more photos from the last detail, showing the top up, kind of going, retracting into the trunk area. And this is what the trunk looks like in 63. There are big changes that are made as we move into 64, but certainly you can typically tell, like if you walk up to one of these cars and the deck lid's open, you can look in the trunk and you can see where that spare tire's at. Right there is the dead giveaway that it's, a 1, 2, or 3, because that's where the tire kind of was in those years. We can see here it does have the rear antenna, which again is not a 63 style, so maybe not the best example, but sometimes it's hard to find really clear, kind of good photos of these cars, and we can see it is a 63. This is the deck lid or the rear grille styling. Rich Leanna. So Rich's name came up when we had Tim Wilson on recently, and I got to thank Tim for coming on. If you haven't listened to the last podcast, it's a crazy story of finding about 1,000-mile 1964 Lincoln Continental. And he brings up Rich's name. Of course, Rich worked on his car, and Rich does some of the best work out there. You can go to his website. Just Google Rich Leanna Restorations, and you'll see it. But here is a 63. We can see one thing that points out here is it does have a wider white wall tire. Ironically enough, now people have told me in 62 you could have ordered with a wider white. I'm sure in 63 you could have as well. I totally get that most people are going to say, look, into 62 and beyond, it's not wide whites. It's the more streamlined white wall. I get it. But on this car, they have wider whites. Okay, that's one thing that sticks out. We can see the antenna in the front. We can see the amber turn signals. We can also see that distinctive 63 grille. Here is a side view showing the top up and the top down, which is cool. I kind of like to look at them, side by side, if you will, to get an idea of the styling. These cars, to me, even when I was a child, I loved them. I mean, to me, with the top down, I mean, even with the top up, but with the top down, just amazingly designed cars. And you can see here kind of a top and bottom, if you will. You'll note the wheel covers are the same as 62. Of course, in 61, I had covered that they had the Lincoln Star in the middle. And we can see the rear here. Now, of course, the rear does retain the clear. So I can't remember if it's the same part number for the front and the back. Some of you could maybe chime in. I don't know if maybe in 64 they said, wow, we have all of these clear lenses. Let's just do the clear lens and then use the amber bulb. I don't know what the thought process is there, but certainly this is kind of cool. No tag on it, so you actually get to see all of the styling. It's also worth noting that this guy right here in the middle pulls down. That's where you fuel the vehicle. Of course, that changes in 64, but the main styling that we see here is the front antenna, the rear grill area. Just a beautiful car. This is from the Black Hawk collection, showing a sedan front 3/4 shot, pretty much the same. It does have a wider white, believe it or not, and some of that is preference. I totally get it. I post these cars, and sometimes people want to beat a dead horse and say, oh, the wide whites, they were gone by the 50s and stuff. I get it. A lot of us younger guys, I mean, I'm not even young, but a lot of us guys like wider white wall tires. It is what it is. Here's, again, another photo with a sedan. You can see here the B-pillar in the middle. That, of course, the only way to modify that, just so everyone knows, is in 61, 2, and 3, 4, and 5, the easiest thing to do is you get the convertible rear glass and you take out this pillar. The convertible rear glass extends a little bit further and it meets up with that front window. I totally understand people are going to argue that this is structural, but it's definitely not. It comes out really easy. And if you were just relying upon that, God be with you. But certainly it's kind of a cool modification that a lot of guys have continued to do. A couple guys in California were kind of starting the trend and whatnot, but certainly I've seen it done. 66, 67 is a little harder to do. There is a guy that did it many years ago, and he's still working on his car, but there's more modification that has to happen in those 2 years. Okay, this is a good shot to me because, again, you see on the sedan, you've got the raised deck lid, right? The key thing here is oftentimes when people kind of freak out on the parts prices, some of these parts are 1 year specific only, okay? So, like, imagine this deck lid if you've got a 63. It's different in the sedan. It's different in the convertible, right, between those two. So, we looked at 3,000 give or take convertibles, right? Let's say you need a deck lid because yours is rusted out. Well, you had 3,000 original. I mean, how many are left of those? Half of them. So that you can kind of start to understand as these cars need certain things, or maybe they're not well maintained, or maybe they're driven a little bit harder than one would hope. You end up with parts that cost some bucks. Here we can kind of see the rear styling a little bit. Of course, you notice a little ding here and possibly the clocking or indexing of the rear bumper end. Those things are going to happen over the course of time. Looks like there's a little ding right here possibly, but you'll note the L is shorter. Again, I talked about that in 62 early on in that model year. The longer L was shortened, and that's what we end up with for the rest of the 62 model into 63, and we'll look at that here a little bit more closely. But of course, it changes in 64. And this is just showing a driver side and a passenger side, top and bottom, just kind of giving you the sedan versus the convertible in terms of the look. The mirror does stay the same after the changes in 61. Late 61 models end up with the same mirror as 62 and 63. I think the only difference is at some point there was a remote, you could adjust it, and other ones you couldn't. So someone could kind of chime in there if you've got more information to add. 62 on the left versus 63. So again, I like to show the side by side. What you basically see from the passenger side and driver side here of these two cars, they are very, very hard to tell apart when they are side by side. The easiest tell typically is the antenna. So if you see the antenna back here on 62 and you don't see the star, well, you know it's a 1 or 2, but without the star, as long as the wheel covers haven't been changed, then you know it's a 62. Here we could tell that with the antenna, if you can actually see it in the photo, we would know that that would be typically a 63. Here's a 62 sedan on the left and a 63 sedan on the right. Both darker models and definitely hard to tell apart. We could tell that this on the left, because of the front grille, has, as I always kind of refer to it in 62, the rectangles, the longer rectangles, if you will. Here was the convertible rear grille that I talked a little bit about earlier. It's very distinctive in 63. I like the 63 grille the most out of 1, 2, and 3, but I think I like the 61 rear grille the most. So it's ironic how that works. And there's even a guy up in New York who I got to get on at some point. He's got a very cool custom Lincoln. It's not airbagged. I think it's on coilovers, but it's a 61, but it has a 63 front grille on it. And it throws people off and people want to argue about it. But it's certainly kind of a custom car. Here we can see the differences in 62 versus 63, and this is really what I like to highlight. This, of course, is a sedan on the right because we see the keyhole, and then you have the convertible on the left. But really what you start to see is you've got this decal, this paint, if you will, that shows you those longer rectangles. Whereas here, you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I always forget. So 8 of these vertical guys here. And this Lincoln Star extends all the way kind of across that back piece. So those are some of the key differences in terms of the looks between the years. Now, I did cover this in prior videos, so I'll go a little bit quicker, but I did mention it a moment ago, the 62-63 scripting here. This is from the Henry Ford Museum. They've got a lot of good information on their website that's digitized, and you can see the classic scripting here. There's one of the Universal hotels in Orlando that we've stayed at with friends before. And if you stay there, kind of the theme is the old school. It's got some old cars oftentimes parked out front. One of their big buildings is the Continental building, and it's that same script, which is kind of cool. Here, same thing I covered in the past. You could see the longer L. That was from 61 until the 62 models. But 11, 13, 61 was the production changeover. We ended up with the scripting here that you see for the rest of 62 and 63. And then, of course, it changes in 64. That's a photo of my car, and that sticks with the brand until 74 when additional changes were made. 63 sedans and convertibles both feature the same wheel covers, which was also used in 62. There's basically no star in the middle, which I kind of talked about earlier. 63, the wide white itself is much more slim than what you'll see on a stock 61. Check out my 61 and 62 videos. My understanding is the wide white was available to order in 63. This image is from a 63 brochure. Here, the key call-outs, 61 versus 62 versus 63 comparison. The antenna moved. Looks almost identical to the 62. Very hard to tell apart from the side view, as I noted prior. But you can see here, 1, 2, 3. We can see 61. They show the keyhole cover. We have got the star on the middle. You've got the wider white wall, and you have the antenna on the back. 62, we have no star. We have the antenna on the back, no keyhole cover. The keyhole cover was on some of the early 62s. Yes, I do understand that. And then 63, boom, the tell is, okay, you've got no star on the wheel cover and you have the antenna up front. That typically is going to be the indicator. However, I did show you an image earlier of a 63 that ironically someone at some point wanted the antenna on the back. Okay, now I do physically own this Motor Trend. July of 63, the 63 Lincoln Continental sedan was featured on the cover of Motor Trend July 63. This is one excerpt from Jim Wright, who did the article, the technical editor. While the initial price of the Continental was fairly high, it has a list of standard equipment that would run at least $1,000 if you bought everything separately. The list includes automatic trans, power steering and brakes, alternator, power windows and door locks, all transistor AM radio, heater, white wall tires, windshield washer, rear seat speaker, padded instrument panel and visors, electric clock, and quite a few other items. Add these to the Continental's other qualities, and the obvious answer is that the Lincoln buyer gets an awful lot of value for his money. Note that they say his. But yeah, it was still a lot of money in that era, but someone that had a job that could allow for them, or they were well off, or whatever. I mean, we know these cars sold. Unfortunately, they didn't sell maybe what we would have expected, especially the convertibles, but they certainly weren't cheap. Now, I do want to just note a couple things. The Motor Trend feature did mention miles per gallon had dropped more than likely due to the 4-barrel carburetor, okay? New combustion chambers that promotes higher mixture turbulence, new rating of 320 horsepower, and the speedometer should be made larger is what he noted. He just kind of felt like it would have been easier to see. All right, I didn't cover this in the previous video, so again, I may do this in the future, but the paint codes, 18 stunning shades of contemporary color for 63. I'm not going to read all of those, but if you look on the right side, the new colors for 63, I've designated those with the asterisk, okay? Polynesian Gold Metallic, which is an amazing color. Chris Dunn has that on a convertible, and just got a chance to hang out with him recently at a local car show, and man, it just looks so beautiful. Inverness Green Metallic, another beautiful color. Spanish Red Metallic, and one of our favorites, Rose Metallic, beautiful color. The color chart's on the left, but those are all of the colors laid out. Okay, additional details. Going to wrap this up here in just a moment. Overall styling stayed mostly the same as 62, which reinforced via their messaging. Even the connoisseur will have difficulty in discerning all of the nuances of styling we have introduced, and that's still true to today. Folks often, when I'll post a photo and I'll say, "Hey, how can you tell it's a 62, not a 61?" And folks will comment, "Wow, it's hard to tell." Yeah, it definitely is. The front and rear grille designs are notable changes. The antenna moves to the front. It's, of course, on the back, as I alluded many times. Deck lid changes for improvements with space. Here's a few vintage ads. These are pretty cool. This is the complete line, kind of reinforcing. Apple did this as well. For the longest time, it's like, hey, they had one iPhone, right? It was just simple. And of course, times change, and now they have a couple different models and things like that. But certainly in this era, it's almost hard to understand. It's hard to fathom that Lincoln had one line, Continental. This Drive a Blue Chip kind of talks about making a sound investment. You see like a business type person walking with his briefcase. For 63, we have enlarged your private world and provided you with added power. This is the one page of the two-pager that I showed earlier. 16 Intolerant Men. They talk about testing all the Lincoln Continentals made, so that's reinforced to their commitment of quality. $6,270, very right to the point, reinforcing the price with the green Lincoln, that beautiful color. The added power is more than a matter of horses. We'll talk more about the lady in the left. This is kind of ironic with that ad. How to make the finest car in the world finer. And enter like a lady. So the lady sitting in the front and the two kids, including the girl, going into the car. Now, someone has commented this in the past, and I have read about this a little bit, so I was familiar. The ad on the left, there was a person, apparently, Angela Duncan. She was born May 26, 1877, and she lived until May 27th, 1878. September 14th, 1927 was an American-born dancer and choreographer who was a pioneer of modern contemporary dance and performed the great acclaim throughout Europe and U.S. Born and raised in California, she lived and danced in Western Europe, the U.S., and the Soviet Russia from the age of 22. She died, apparently, when her scarf became entangled in the wheel and axle of a car in which she was traveling in Nice, France. Someone has commented that it was ironic that this person had a scarf on. Now, this Oscar Mayer ad popped up on my phone years ago. It was an Instagram ad, and I took a screenshot of it. And I always thought it was kind of cool. Of course, it's a 61, but it ties in because it reminded me of this ad here and this story. I understand it to be true. And I don't think Lincoln was worried about that. It's the style of that era. Women wore scarves and things like that. And it's just kind of an ironic tie-in. But Oscar Mayer, you got to like this. You see the bacon. Okay. Here's a couple more ads, or at least this one. This one I stumbled across a couple years ago when I bought it. Ironically enough, it has a C-word car in it. We don't want to say that word today. And it has a Lincoln Continental. Now, I believe this to be a a 63. It could be a 62. But I would imagine, I think it's a 63 ad, so I'm pretty sure Lincoln would have wanted to have the latest model in there. And it's kind of a cool Firestone ad. There's a very rare commercial that I have posted in social media, and it's a Firestone commercial, and it features a Lincoln Continental. Sadly, a lot of those commercials are gone unless they're sitting on those like microfilm type deals. There are people that will sometimes acquire that stuff and they'll post it, but I've had some weird run-ins with those type of people, and I don't have any further comment. Here's an ad on the left, built to resist time and weather better. And then on the right, this is a rare one that I came across, Mercury City in a Lincoln Mercury dealer. This is a used Continental. The only car finer is a new Continental. So kind of cool. The owner's manual, I wanted to bake this in as well. This is the front. I kind of wish I would have done that in the other ones, but I didn't think about it. In summary, the 63 Lincoln Continental was often regarded as many people's favorite of the 1960s. The style and elegance was perfectly carried through from 61 to 2 to 3. More changes are forthcoming in 64 with the 4th generation Lincoln Continental. Please consider subscribing in the future. I do plan to cover 64 and up. That's, for the most part, what I hone in on. Now, there's probably going to be some of you that can kind of chime in and kind of hit on some key things. I can tell you in 64, we see additional bright work that's added on the exterior and things like that. There's, of course, a lot of changes that we'll cover in the other videos. But, looking back at the content, what I covered today, like I said, I'm always intrigued to hear you guys chime in. Some of you have helped me. The folks like Blair and TC and Chris Dunn, John Cashman, these guys have really helped me over the course of time, really hone in on some of these things, right? Chris Dunn and I have some great conversation. He, of course, owns Lincoln Land, and, he's reinforced a lot of these small nuances, things that I wouldn't have really known, but he knows I'm very intrigued by, so he shares with me. So I got to give him a tip of the cap. With that being said, again, thank you to Colorado Custom Wheels. They make the only billet replica wheels that look exactly like the hubcap, but they make it in billet aluminum. Also, Devious Custom. Shout out to Jeff and team if you need custom parts for your Lincoln, or maybe you just want to see what else he has, like the window switches, right? The master control switches and things like that. Hit up deviouscustoms.com. Thanks to Griots. And I forgot to give a huge shout out to Steel Rubber earlier. It slipped my mind, but Steel Rubber is a sponsor of this podcast. It's STEELE rubber.com. They make the best weather stripping in the business. We had the owner on one of the early episodes of Lincoln Addict Podcast. So again, don't just take my word for it. Steel Rubber, and then save those receipts. If you ever sell your car, it's a sound investment with Steel. Make sure you use the hashtag sealed with steel, STEELE. Thank you to everyone that continues to listen and watch. stay tuned to our social media pages for photos and videos coming from the Tampa Kennedy Cruise, the 7th annual. The Texas guys are getting together the weekend after us, and I know the California crew, they continue to do what they're doing out there. They do a ton of cruises with the 2 crews out there. Tip of the cap, everyone. Much love. Spend some time with your family on Thanksgiving, and stay on to Rise. ODB, we out of here. All right, I did this in another video for my other podcast, our lifestyle podcast, which is kind of mini trucks and culture and old school BMX. So I figured I would do it here as well at the end of this episode. So these are vintage ads that are in some frames. The one here is not in a frame yet. And for those that don't know, Budd Automotive, they made the body panels for the Lincoln Continentals. Try to touch upon more of that in the future. But this is the wall. 2 renderings that I've had done by Jake, aka rendered by Thor. He's been really busy, and I think he's had to turn down a lot of work because he works at a very high-end hot rod shop now. But he did both of those. Of course, I didn't really talk a lot about it. I sold the 67 when I acquired my other 65 convertible. That's my 64 Smuggler's Blues. This is kind of the collection of Hot Wheels, and they just were kind of taking over. And I finally decided to just put them up here in the room. These are from a couple artists. Nick at Surface Art. This is from Chris Dunlop, I believe is how you pronounce his name. That's number 3 of 200. He posted this artwork years ago, and I was like, man, I wish you would sell this stuff. I'd buy a print. And he goes, hey, they're on my site now. Boom. And I bought one. Here's a couple more. I recently acquired the Matchbox because I could not find that one. And there's another convertible. Now, I'm not going to show you a lot of this other stuff because I collect all kinds of things. I will show you. Well, let's do it like this. Let's turn this off. I recently redid all of this. It was really a mess. And I had the Oakley display case I had purchased, and I ended up purchasing, these are the IKEA deals. I got them from someone locally, and they had already put lights in them. So a couple of the lights down there are burnt out, and the that light up there is starting to kind of dim some. So I got to make a decision if I'm going to get the same light, or I'm just going to go with something different. And of course, I have not lit up the Oakley display case yet. There are a few more Lincoln things. This used to be my Lincoln row in here. There's a John Cashman card. Here's a couple loose convertibles and sedans. One sedan, convertible model. That's an original. And then one of the old dub cars. And there's another John Cashman card there. Those are a few things. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is my main display case from all my Lincoln stuff. I haven't put lights in it. I've wanted to. I actually have lights inside that gauge cluster. They're on a little battery-powered thing. I can just hit the button. Got some things in front of it right now, so I can't easily do that. But here's another Surface Art. Here's a Mob Steel signed photo by all the original crew of the Mob Steel TV show. There's some cool things in here. John Cashman recently sent me that postcard, which I did a video, I think a short video here, and I did one in social media. There's a few miscellaneous things, including the NOS emblem that came with my car and the receipt. There's some LCOC little deals in there from the 1960s for their different meetups, and there's a photo of JFK and a few things. Some stuff that came from the 6th floor museum in Texas. But I'll try to cover some more of that in the future. You can kind of see down there's a bunch of books and literature and things like that. So with that being said, shout out to Stinkin' Lincoln. I'm going to be doing a tech video on one of his products here soon for YouTube. Stay on the rise, everyone, and thank you for all the support. We're out of here.